We all want to have relationships with others, whether that starts off by asking a classmate how their weekend was, gossiping with your nail tech, or passing conversation with a neighbor. We want to feel connected, and we can take these day-to-day moments of connection to understand them within the context of a broader local, national, and international community. But as lifestyles become more individualized and communities become more fragmented, we lose touch to that internal wiring to be with others. And that takes a major toll on oral traditions, in particular, oral storytelling. Oral histories preserve voices, memories, and perspectives of diverse groups of people. It's a way for people from different walks of life to come together and discuss their past and present while still communicating these shared hopes for the future. There are many contributing factors to the decline of oral histories, though, like a reliance on a written history, assimilation, the loss of elders, and generational gaps, but loneliness might be a rising factor. 1 in 6 people worldwide experience loneliness and social isolation, which again has a major toll on oral traditions. We fall into this negative feedback loop where we are already so disconnected and don't know how to overcome that fragmentation. And fear is a common theme between this. Whether that looks like fear of vulnerability because we don't trust others, we don't want to be taken advantage of in some of our most vulnerable moments, or fear of being a burden, allowing others to shoulder the pain that we are all too familiar with, because we all have our own stresses, and who are we to add something to someone else? So how, in an age where we are so disconnected, do we overcome our anxieties and fears to build community? And how do we use oral traditions to build a shared understanding of the world? As a Lebanese American, I've always been all too familiar with the importance of oral tradition and oral histories because, like many others from the Middle East, my family left its ancestral homeland to escape occupation and violence and instability. And we can read about these things in news articles or in academic texts, but it's the stories that we tell that humanize the statistics and all of these analyses. A lot of the times for us, these stories come out in an air of hesitance and nonchalance as elders recount guns pressed against their heads, and even now in my family group chat, sending news updates of when the next bomb might strike or whose home got destroyed. But in between each message, there's laughter, and there's jokes, and there's appreciation for life outside of this narrative of perpetual victimhood and perpetual war. I didn't really know what that looked like, though, until tragedy hit my own life. I didn't understand how we can have this tragedy, but still such an appreciation for all the goodness in the world. But on February 13th in 2023, I was a student at Michigan State University when we had a school shooting that took the lives of 3 students and injured so many others. On the anniversary of that date, one question always comes up. Where were you when it happened? Friends tell me how afraid for me they were. Family members compare their experiences with weapons-based violence, and strangers tell me exactly where they were while I tell them where I was. We sought refuge in apartments and homes and businesses, classrooms, alleyways, listening to police scanners to try to understand what our fate might look like. And we also recall the wake of February 13th after all of that fear that we had experienced, because the MSU and the East Lansing community showed up in ways we never saw before. People offered free food and mental health resources. They brought their dogs and cats for students to pet, and moms offered hugs to those who were away from their moms and their dads and siblings, friends, and other loved ones. We set aside so many differences and built a community rooted in compassion and love for a stranger. Resilience grew in that moment. All of the fear that we felt was replaced by that sense of love. My community abroad showed up in similar ways when I survived a bombing in Lebanon in 2024. Me and 8 other members of my family were in a little boutique in Beirut when we felt the ground shake, and I could smell the smoke in the air after an Israeli airstrike just a couple blocks down. And we only escaped thanks to the dozens of people who directed us out of those crowded streets. Later that night, I found myself in the home of a distant auntie that I didn't even know existed. She gave me a warm place to sleep. She fed me and she made me laugh, but most importantly, she got to know me. A couple days later, I came back to America with much of my family still in Lebanon, but I brought back a bracelet one of my distant cousins made, and again, a relative that I didn't even know before. But still, every time I look at it, I'm reminded of the sense of home that I had with them. The sense of home I will always carry, even if we didn't know each other before that tragedy struck. In both of these experiences, each respective community grounded itself in so much love and compassion. Despite how many degrees of separation we all were, these shared experiences brought us together. As an individual, I can take these experiences and understand the real impact of weapons-based violence and the role that it had in my life, but I can also communicate this with others and share that aspect of my history. And as a collective, we can communicate these things, hear these things, and open up the conversation to honor all of those who came before us and who suffered from those tragedies. We can say the names and remember the faces of those who passed, like Alexandria Werner, Brian Fraser, and Ariel Anderson at MSU, as well as the hundreds of thousands in the Middle East, including former MSU Humphrey Fellow Tariq Thabit from Gaza. Because guns will shoot and bombs will fall, and unfortunately the world will keep turning. But the one thing that follows, no matter how much time passes or no matter where we go, is history. And that's the importance of oral tradition. We open ourselves up to perspectives and experiences outside of our own. We share a gentle space with others, we build community, and we overcome fear in real time. It doesn't take tragedy to strike for us to reconcile with that cycle of lost compassion and creativity and care. We can come to conferences like this and hear stories like mine, or more simply, we can ask a stranger, "How are you?" Really. We can take that first step to overcome the fear of talking to another person and really start building the relationships that we want to see. And try to create long-lasting change, because when one conversation opens up, these things just keep multiplying. We bring ourselves closer together, and it only gets easier to build the future that we truly want to see. Because every time we speak truth to power, we build a living history together. And every time we hold that space, we recognize that we all have a role in this shared story of humanity. Thank you.